Oh man, there's a lot of cards on screen again. It must be rotation season. Hey guys, this is Kim McCall. Welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game History video. We are on to the 2021 rotation, going into the 2021 format. And there's a lot of cards that rotate, but a lot of them don't really matter in the current meta because the current meta is like 3 cards or whatever. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a weird one to go over. We have a lot of sets rotating here. We are moving into Team Up On is the format, so we have Ultra Prism rotating, which is the start of the Prism Star cards. We then have Forbidden Light rotating, the Malamar set, so a bunch of good stuff to come out of that, at least what used to be good stuff. We have Celestial Storm, which is the Gen 3 reprint set, so not quite so many good things coming out of this one, but still a couple of decks. We had Rayquaza was really good for the time. And then we also have Lost Thunder rotating here as well, which is the beginning of the, just about the beginning of the tag team mechanic. Obviously we don't rotate any of the tag teams out because that came out in Team Up, but it also, Magikarp and Wailord was playable within this set. All the Lasso mechanic stuff, I believe, rotates within this set as well. There was only really one set that did the stuff there. We do also rotate Dragon Majesty. There are a couple of cards that are worth noting in here, like the Quagsire is a big one. So we'll talk about those as we go. And then a bunch of promos rotate too. I believe it is Sun and Moon 150 something was the last one. It's kind of weird with the numbering of some of these, but like, yeah, there's a 131 in there for stuff, so it just, all sorts within, I think it's about 150 odds is where the last one is. I don't remember which card it is off the top of my head, so we'll just go over the relevant stuff from here as we go. Most of these, as are normal, I guess, in this sort of era, most of them are reprints of cards which are actually in the main sets, and this so they rotate alongside them, but there's a couple of things that are noteworthy otherwise. One of the big things that happens within this rotation that's a bit different is we actually have a couple of bannings from Standard. Mismagius and Belelba and Bryson-Man do get completely banned in this as well. These are cards which are more recent than the rotation would actually get rid of. The Mismagius is getting banned because Mysterious Message alongside Reset Stamp and Duskstone all allow you to effectively put your opponent down to only a couple of cards in their hand to start the game with, and with all the search stuff that we have available, it is not too difficult to enable this either, which is really dumb. And despite one of Control's biggest tools rotating, they still have plenty of other stuff that makes Belelba and Bryson-Man obnoxious to deal with in post-rotation as well. This is used as the end goal for the Oranguru control decks. They would basically be Excadrill control instead after this, which is not as good of course, but it still shuffles a bunch of cards into decks. So being able to mill all of the stuff out, being able to use Cinchinos and stuff like that to draw through everything, and still being able to deny your opponent any relevant draws, it's ridiculous. So this still deserves to be rotated regardless, or banned regardless. Eventually, like a year later, we will get effectively reprints of these. These are the lost cards from the Sun and Moon promo stuff, where they basically just printed new cards that have these names. They don't even have the same names because it's Sabrina and Bryson-Man, so whatever. They're not particularly good, but it's still there anyway. We do have a lot of cards that rotate. There's a ton of Pokemon down here. I counted about 105 overall that's in this not currently meta pool. There's a bunch of trainers that kind of fit mostly into that camp as well. I think you could maybe move some of these up and down, but I'm not going to like split hairs over it. We have about just under 30 meta cards, I think, that are somewhat relevant to the current format, and then a couple of cards that either don't rotate or do rotate but come back at the very end of the format. Powpad was reprinted in the base set of Sword and Shield and has the up to tag on it now as well, but this would have been included in the format rotation if it wasn't for this print. And then Copycat does rotate, but Evolving Skies at the very, very end of the 2021 season actually reprints this card. Pretty cool reprint for it too, but it's just, I don't know, it's not a very good card, if I'm being honest, so I never really cared too much about it, but at least the art is kind of nice, so there is that. Let's go on to what I at least consider relevant for the current meta within this, and we'll talk about the stuff as we go. Ditto Prism is less relevant now than it used to be, but there are still a couple of decks that run it, especially Excadrill was a thing that enjoyed it, and it's a real shame seeing this go, actually. This is one of the coolest abilities of all time. Being able to evolve into any Stage 1 Pokemon is great. It was also future-proofed by specifically being Stage 1, because it meant that you couldn't evolve into a VMAX, or like nowadays you'd be able to evolve into a Stage 1 EX and it'd be great, but like a VMAX or a V-Star cannot be put on top of this guy. So it was really cool the way it was done, like even if it wasn't immediately intentional, you have to think they kind of know at least a fair bit in advance the kind of effects they're going to print. So yeah, shame that we didn't get to keep this. Articuno GX is a control tool, which is why we don't really see it in our games, because we just hate this kind of deck. It was mostly only ever really used for Cold Crush. Legendary Ascent is what let it get into the active. We see this now in the set that is just released in Paradox Rift. No, that was the last one. Temporal Forces with Iron Leaves EX actually has the same ability, but this one has a GX attack that discards all the energy on both active, which is really dumb for a bunch of decks that would, you know, want to have a ton of energy in play on their active, and they can't do it anymore because this guy's a bot. Control decks love this, and I hate it as a result. The Makagos both rotate here. The GX was pretty solid for attacking, as we saw in the Sword and Shield set with Sai, but being able to smooth over the top card of your deck was also super good. I think there's a Seismitoad maybe in format that does this, but it's a Stage 2, so literally who cares? Fun card to have access to. And it was nice to get to play it this time, because I didn't get to use it in the original set that it came out in Gen 3, because I didn't pull it. We were drafting at that time. Victini Star Prism goes away. This is a bit of a blow for the Welder Box decks, because they do like to have this as a single prize big hit that shuffles all of their energy back into the deck so they can welder more with them, so shame for that. Seb Striker is mostly only used at the moment in the Excadrill deck, but it is a meta deck, and it would be really relevant with Eternatus being big here as well, so kind of unfortunate to see this go. Discard Draw 4 is a nice option to have as an extra draw thing in the deck. Now I guess we have to use Silvally if we want this kind of extra draw power, but we also just released Crobat, so who really knows, right? Diancie Prism for the fighting decks is a big loss. This actually might affect math numbers in a few decks. Anything that was hitting 150 prior to damage mods will no longer kill Eternatus in one shot, because it's 340 HP on that ridiculous thing. So yeah, nasty numbers to lose, I suppose. Oranguru, good freaking riddance to this card. I absolutely despise this thing. It's a cool idea being able to put 3 cards in the discard to the bottom of the deck. Unfortunately, as with a lot of cool ideas, it ends up just being degenerate bullshit. There's a reason why certain cards are not allowed, like generally not allowed to be recycled, and if they are, it's very select circumstances and not on an attack that's repeatable like this. Really stupid card, especially with the way the format ended up going. We avoid it because we just don't like that kind of deck, but do keep in mind that for the last like 6 sets or so, so we're talking a year and a half-ish in real time, there has been a control deck which is arguably the best deck in format at all points in time. It's so dumb. Blacephalon GX rotates. This was usually just a one-of in the Blacephalon deck itself, the baby one, at this stage, but it has been very powerful and very relevant in the past as well. 180 HP just isn't what it used to be, obviously, for taking damage. This is so easy to one-shot now that it's just too much of a liability to play by itself. But it could even ramp up to KO these gigantic VMAXs that we have here, so yeah. could have still been very powerful. Zeraora, likewise, HP is not what it used to be, but full voltage is a very good attack to have around. Being able to accelerate a ton of energy into play for your Boltund is really good, and Thunderclap Zone is a fantastic tool to have in all of these lightning decks, giving you effectively zero retreat on all of your guys was super good. There's a fair few hits to lightning which come up here, one of which being Electro Power that we see over here. Lightning decks no longer have the extra damage reach that they used to, so this is a very welcome change, to be honest. This card was one of the reasons why Pikarom was so strong for its time. Acrobike is going as well. This was a decent speed tool, especially within Generation 8, where we can no longer play supporter cards on the first turn. Digging an extra 2 cards at the start of the game could be really good. Having to discard one could often be a bit painful, but anyone who plays Lost Box nowadays knows how to manage this kind of effect. Adventure Bag goes, so we don't get an easy access to just any 2 tools that we want. We still have Guzma Hollow though, so we can search out a specific tool alongside the Stadium and Special Energy. It's pretty fine to me. Fiery Flint goes away. The fire decks do lose a bit of their quick access to stuff here. We still have Energy Search and Energy Spinner, of course, so we have access to some energy searching, and fire decks in particular still have Giant Hearth, so they're not out of options per se, but the quick access to draw 4 fire is gone, and that will impact certain playlines. Mysterious Treasure, one of the best search cards ever printed. Discard a card from your hand and search for any Psychic or Dragon Pokemon is unbelievably powerful. Losing that is a massive blow to any future Psychic deck. It's not the only one, but it is certainly one of the big ones. Netball is also one of the best search cards ever printed. Like, they printed this in Generation 8 as Fog Crystal, and it is ungodly powerful in that. Netball, though, was really hampered by the fact of it is only good on grass types, which are not typically very good. So, yeah, but searching out for a basic grass or a grass energy is busted. So, yeah, very good for Rowlet and Alolan Executor. We'll see that soon as well. Supporters, Cynthia goes away, the best shuffle draw that we've ever had, and doesn't get reprinted. Like, so far, I'm kind of wondering if they're going to print this in like the I block or something. They did recently print Youngster, so maybe not. But I think we're kind of due for this Shuffle Draw 6 again. Ponce is a really good card, as it turns out. Tantalizer goes away, the slightly weaker Cynthia, but also has the option to switch in case you're getting stuck in the active by something. There is a Flygon in Darkness Ablaze that could lock you with its ability, so yeah, it's a shame, but we get Birdkeeper to replace this, so I think we're totally fine. Volkner goes away as well. This is in Ultra Prism, so again, another avenue of lightning dominance going away here. Pikarom stays around, by the way. It does not completely go away or anything. It's just you've got to build it very differently now compared to what you used to. Stadiums. Heat Factory is a huge one. This is one of the reasons why the Blacephalon deck and the Welder decks in general were as powerful as they were, because Heat Factory lets you add an extra draw free to your engine, which is ridiculous, so losing the draw power really hurts those decks and forces them to play more than just 4 supporter cards. Thank God for that. Shrine of Punishment goes away, but this was only really used in like 2 decks. There was the potential for Dragapult to use it, as an extra damage mod in the Pikarom matchup, and then I found Power Plant was just better in general, that's why I didn't play it. And then the Arceus ADP decks actually played it to counter other ADP decks, I think, which is really silly, so yeah. And then we have Thunder Mountain going away as well, the other huge hit to Lightning decks here. Costing a Lightning less on your attacks is just unbelievably powerful, and like, the only reason this works is because it's a Prism Star Stadium, right? But that actually gave it a little bit of extra support too, which is just unreal. Super good card. Ultra Space goes away. You see this as a one-off sometimes in the Blacephalon decks, because they could play Fiery Flint to replace the Giant Hearth. They could play this as their search card in order to get Blacephalons out as well. So, yeah. Also saw a ton of play in the past, of course, but nowadays, a bit less so. Escape Board goes away. This hampers Jirachi, but it doesn't really kill it because Scoop Up Net exists. We now have a new engine for it, so it's not as bad as it looks, but it is certainly a hurt to the Jirachi engine, because you can no longer pay retreat with Jirachi anymore, or just like not have to pay retreat, I mean, just use a skateboard. Doesn't work now. Finally, the meta-relevant energy. We have Rainbow Energy going on here. That goes away permanently. We have Aurora Energy that replaces this in the current standard, obviously, but we no longer have access to the damage counter part of it. That does matter sometimes. Spiritomb decks actually, like, they still exist post-rotation, but like they played this card because getting the extra damage counter meant 30 extra damage. And then the unit energies all go away as well. These are bridging archetype ones. Quite often you would see this one in particular to bridge Water Fire Reliant decks. Played this in, or could play this in like certain Quagsire decks. There was one that Sai played actually that used this one, which is pretty good. There was a Ultimate Mewtwo and Mew list that played a couple of these alongside the Rainbow and Auroras, but ultimately we found that that deck was a bit lacking, so Pepper tweaked it to play this unit energy instead, which I think made the deck a bit better overall, to be honest. So yeah. And then this one won Worlds in like 2018, so it's still really good too. So that's the most relevant stuff to the current metagame, which admittedly is like, again, 3 cards maybe, so not a particularly diverse one. Let's have a look at all the trainer cards which are not currently that relevant. You could maybe make some arguments for these. I would not be opposed to that. But here's the stuff that I think no longer is like super relevant, but still was in the past. Beast Ball is something when like Buzzwole GX was one of the best decks in the format, was able to get those Ultra Beasts out of the, I was going to say extra deck, but that's not quite the mechanic. Price card searching is always good. Eventually we get Hisui and Heavy Ball, which is the better replacement to this, but that's not for a very long time yet. Beast Ring was also extremely degenerate for a very long time when the Ultra Beast decks were at their peak. Unfortunately, it did fall off quite hard, mostly when they stopped printing Ultra Beasts, let's be fair. But yeah, this is one of the most powerful energy accelerants to ever exist, so good riddance, I guess? Custom Catcher was noteworthy because it was the only Gust that we had at the start of the previous season, but even outside of that, any deck that was playing greens could use this before Boss existed to get a straight Gust. And sometimes the tiny bit of draw consistency actually mattered as well, so yeah. Energy Recycle System and Recycler actually both rotate as well. We eventually get Energy Recycler back in like the 2022 season, I think, but right now, Energy Recycling, shuffling back into deck, mostly from Ordinary Rod, and that's it. So, gotta play more copies of that now, I guess. Recycle System is noteworthy because you could get 1 energy back into the hand, which sometimes was actually really cool. Rather than shuffling them back into the deck, you couldn't always get them out easily from there, so good stuff. Friend Ball, not super good, but did see a little bit of play when Dedenne was like 2-3 off in every single deck, and there was like Tapu Lele and stuff like that, so select decks could play it to be an extra draw card. Not many though. Last Chance Potion was mostly used exclusively in the cheesy Donphan Florges deck, which used Try to Abuse Sturdy in order to never die, and then the Florges could recycle this to the top of the deck and you would just keep doing that. Not really something that's too relevant, but it's a fun effect nonetheless. We're seeing this 30 HP or less thing happen a little bit in Paradox Rift as well. So, no, again, Temporal Forces is the set. Silly cow. Lost Blender was used basically exclusively in the Lost March deck, which wasn't particularly good, but it's kind of neat. At least you can permanently remove a couple of resources that you know you're not going to need, mostly Pokemon, so your Lost March does more damage. It's alright. Low Ball is mostly a hit to the Vikavolt deck. There was a Vikavolt in Rebel Clash that was like super cool, does a ton of damage for the energy you have in play, but losing this means we can't abuse the Charger Bug nearly as well as an energy source, and that's just unfortunate, really. Again, Ordinary Rod still exists, but then you got to search out the Vikavolt pieces again, so bit lame. Mixed Herbs was mostly used in Reshizard, which is no longer a good deck, but it's still being able to heal 90 in all special conditions when you're active is a strong effect. So yeah, pretty good in the decks that could play it. Order Pad was used a little bit in Pika decks that wanted to go crazy fast. I did show Pika Pads before. That was a tournament viable deck, so kind of neat. Peking Red card was not really used, but could have been used to allow for stuff like Mimikyu and Gengar tag team to how much damage it's going to do, and if they don't have enough trainers in the hand, you could force them to shuffle draw, hopefully get some more trainers in the hand. So yeah, Rainbow Brush, mostly a meme with the Victini and the Bird Trio with like the Hat Lady stuff I did, but actually did see a little bit of play in just Victini acceleration decks in general, because you wanted to have a bunch of different energy available in those decks. It's a weird card. I like it though, so yeah. Super Scoop Up has its final printing here. Rest in peace. I don't think they're ever gonna reprint this in this exact form. Maybe they'll surprise me, but yeah, was a fun card. Not always a healthy one though, as Scoop Up Net shows us nowadays. Switch Raft is like Switch Cart nowadays, but only for water Pokemon. Kind of a weird card. Water decks were not the strongest during this block, so there was never really a deck that could use it. There's a few decks now that probably could, but it's just not worth it, so yeah, whatever. Wait and See Hammer, dumb card design, shouldn't exist in the first place, but it did see play a little bit in the Sword and Shield set exclusively, because Zacian ADP was the best deck in format. This stunted that deck. There you go. Doesn't do enough to it nowadays for it to matter though. Supporter cards that are going, Apricorn Maker is going to get replaced by Ball Guy at some point during, I think, this rotation, but we've lost a lot of targets for this anyway. But it was really cool in the Grand Ball deck, that's why I want to mention it. Search it up for 2 Pokeball style items, put them into the hand. Very, very good in a deck that wants to empty its hand out but still needs to search a ton of Pokemon. Copycat, like I said, does technically go away at the moment. It's for basically the whole format, so I'm just going to note it here anyway. Crash Awake never really had a deck because discarding 2 water energy just wasn't really viable because water wasn't good enough, but in theory, search any 2 cards out of the deck is super good. Just didn't really have the access to it. I tried to play the Mewtwo Mew with the Blastoise stuff, and ultimately, as good as it was to search Rare Candy Blastoise, inconsistent was the name of the game with that. Unfortunately, just didn't work out well enough. Cyrus Prism, for a similar reason, didn't really work. If you're playing the water or metal deck, you could use this, but the opponent gets the choice, and a lot of the time they get to just like shuffle away Dedenes and shuffle it, because that's what most of their bench is, right? Dedenes, Jirachi, stuff like that. They just get to shuffle away all the stuff that's relevant, so it doesn't really do enough, especially not for a Prism Star Stadium. Supporter card even. Diantha was amazing for the Gardevoir decks and the Grand Ball deck as well. Whimsicott GX did play this as well, but it wasn't really a great deck, so whatever. But take any 2 cards in the discard pile is a great effect to have. Even if it is on a very specific type KO, still insane. Really, really strong card. Faber got used when we didn't have Tool Scrapper, because it was one of the few ways of removing tools. It did Lost Zone them, which was sometimes pretty good. Also, Special Energy could get removed, so there were pretty solid times to use this. Just like Zerosic in Gen 6, it saw play here and there. Fisherman was really good for decks that could Rain Dance things into play, like the Magna Zone deck, but that one had Mount Coronet, which is also rotating, but still, really fun card to have. We just have a Hydreigon come out in the latest set, which can do that, so like Rain Dance a bunch of stuff in play. So could have been good. Gardenia never really saw play again because grass is pretty terrible, but heal 80 from something with a grass energy on it. 80's a lot to heal from 1 card, so there's times where this could have worked. Hiker was the progenitor of the Chip Chip Ice Axe. Unfortunately, that card stays in format, but it's a funny card, so I'm going to put it here anyway. Look at the top 5 of either deck is kind of neat, though. You can basically Rotom Phone your own deck as well if you need to. Lady is not very good, but it is search for up to 4 basic energy. Sometimes in a Rain Dance style deck, that's what you need. So, kinda neat, I suppose. Fiery Flint was obviously better for the one deck that wanted this, though. Lance Prism never had a home because Dragon type sucks. But in theory, you could get Evolution Dragons into play as well. It was supposed to be used with Dragonites. There are a couple of those still in format. Doesn't really do anything now. Also, only because it's on like KO as well. That's just really bad. Lily got completely shafted by Generation 8. Otherwise, it might have still seen play if you could play it going first. Very good card for its time, though. Alicia was the Prism Star Searcher. Came up like once. I don't remember it being played otherwise, so whatever. Looker was in a few control decks actually, because Oranguru bottom decking the cards means that Looker could then get them all back. So very irritating combination there. Lusamine, dumb card. Don't ever print a thing that doesn't can get itself back. Why would you do that? Just asking for trouble, and trouble is what she gave. Yeah, the Ultra Prism art kept it in format, no longer so. Speaking of Lusamine, the Prism Star supporter is here as well. Single Price Ultra Beast was a thing at times, but this wasn't really played very often, so non-meta it is. Lysander Prism on a similar thing, even though Fire ended up being a really powerful thing, this card is basically useless for it, because it's not accelerating energy, and it's not even doing anything that relevant. Like, Lost Zone cards from the opponent's discard? Why? Mars is another control card that is going away. I wish Lieutenant Surge's strategy was as well, but whatever. Draw 2, make the opponent discard a random card is irritating, but when you play 2 of these in the same turn and then follow up with another hand destruction of some sort, it becomes outright devastating. So yeah, good riddance. Mina, my beloved, I love this card, but obviously fairy types don't get printed anymore, so it's kind of useless. But some of my best decks of the block use this card, and yeah, so much fun. Gardevoir Sylvia will never be the same again without this thing. I mean, it rotates too, but you know what I mean. Fan Club has been usurped by Sonya, but did see some play here and there, so we're going to mention it anyway. I think Trainer Chip actually said, not this exact artwork, but one of these, like the full art one or something. He recreated this with his wife and kid as the actual artwork stuff recently. It's so cute. Professor Elm's Lecture, really good for the evolution decks before Gen 8 started. Now we can't play it going first, so it's really limited as to how good it actually is. But, you know, we get this kind of design space showing up in item cards now with Buddy Poffin, so neat to see. Sightseer chose the cuter artwork for this one because I love the close-up. Sometimes saw some play if you wanted some extra draw and slash or discard, because the discard effect was actually kind of good here as well. There were a bunch of times before research was a thing where this actually mattered, so that's kind of nice. Steven's Resolve was a control BS card, but search it out for any free cards, put them into hand. Sometimes happen to be good. Does end your turn for it though, so kind of whatever. Life Forest. Never saw play because grass types suck, but it was also a really good healing card as well, and could have considered it for the Rillaboom deck at the very least. I think Turfield is better though, but it's worth considering because healing does matter. We have seen that in many games recently. Lysander Labs could have been put in the meta stuff, but nobody was playing it, so I don't think it's that relevant. Preventing tool cards from having effects is really good though. No more Big Charm. In the middle of a turn, where you might actually get a KO from it, that's nice. Mount Coronet, like I said, rotates as well, getting 2 metals and the discard back to the hand. Much less relevant when Metal Sorcerer exists, so you'd rather just accelerate them than get them back to hand, but it was really good when the Magnezone is rotating as well, so I have good memories with the card. Then Sky Pillar is the last stadium here that's rotating. Weird card, just preventing bench damage. But the problem is you could just get it bounced before the opponent does the bench damage, so it's not really very good at doing its job, unfortunately. Choice Helmet was pretty good when Choice Band rotated, especially. Being able to reduce damage down on tag team stuff to be 3 shots instead of 2 shots was super relevant. So yeah, there were a couple of formats for this. Counter gain was really good for the single prize decks, especially being able to pay one less colorless for attacks. There were a couple of cards that in combination could actually make some things attack for 0 energy with this, which was really fun, like Jolteon GX and Thunder Mountain. Hustle Belt is a bit of a loss for the Spiritomb deck. They now have to play Cape of Toughness and have extra HP to like take extra turns and stuff to absorb more damage. It's a bit more awkward than it used to be, but being able to do a flat 60 extra damage meant that the Spiritomb could do like 220 on a maxed out count was an awful lot for the time. Very strong card. Metal Frying Pan means the metal types are now weak to fire again. Losing this is a pretty big hit to them, and does actually mean that Zacian itself has a check in the format now, which is something they didn't really have much of beforehand, so that's cool. Spell Tag used to be relevant when Malamar single prize stuff was good, but unfortunately Malamar single prize has not been good in a very long time, so this card is flat out irrelevant at this point. And then the special energy, Beast Energy of course dies when Ultra Beasts are not very good, so this hasn't been relevant for a while. Memory Energy never really was relevant, but it was always one of those back of your mind kind of cards. It's nice to see these like use your pre-evolution things coming up. There's a tool card that's going to do it in Vivid Voltage, however, so there's at least that. And then Super Boost Energy was really cool when Gardevoir GX was legal and actually playable. Lost Thunder format, Sun and Moon to Lost Thunder, was a very cool format that really took advantage of this card. So nice. Gonna hopefully be somewhat quicker through the Pokemon here because there's so many of them to go through. Alolan Raticate specifically used in one deck that was the Ultimate Mewtwo Mew thing. It was terrible, don't play it. Alolan Ninetales was really good in the Sun Moon Lost Thunder setup because the item search was great. Inteleon Engine outclasses that now. Alolan Meowth still got played a little bit even as late in as the Global Championship, the Worlds if you will, for this year, because Eternatus could take advantage of it. 70 damage on the first turn going second is pretty good after all. The Persian itself did see occasional play because 90 for 0 was quite a strong attack. Slowking was an anti-control, I guess would probably be the thing for it. It was anti-Reshizard was the specific thing because triple acceleration energy let it do 280 with weakness, but Memory Melt was pretty good as an anti-control thing, so, or even in control sometimes to Lost Zone the last card that's good in the opponent's hand. Magnet Zones, both of them were pretty cool. The metal one was much better in the end, but Rain Dance type effects, I love these sort of things. Some people hate them. I love this kind of effect, and I'm a little bit sad to see the lightning one go, I suppose. They got usurped in later parts of the format though, so whatever. Onyx was an anti-Pikarom card when it came out, mostly used in Quagsire and the Garnadel, but anything that could put 4 colors in play could use this card. Electro GX was very funny with the Lapras Thief, which we didn't get to see, but the Lapras VMAX could use this thing and be super silly with it, so very fun card to play. Blissey was one of Sai's decks. You could play this with the Coin Toss Reflippers. Glimwood Tangle would be the most recent one, so you could still do it. We're going to see it on the Cramorant coming up though, so yeah. Kingdra GX was really a strong part of my water-based Mewtwo and Mew deck, which I had a lot of fun with. I also played it as a pure deck in Sun and Moon Lost Thunder with the Kingdra from like Burning Shadows. Pretty cool card. Really strong effect on this too. Super Boost makes it really powerful. Umbreon was part of the Spiritomb deck that let you hit for 120 when one of the Spiritombs went down, so pretty solid attacker for that time period. Leafeon, bit of a meme, but Grand Bloom GX let you full evolve your entire bench, which was pretty solid. You just had to be able to get enough Pokemon down for that to matter. The Glaceon was tried a few times, didn't generally do very well unfortunately, but being able to stop a lot of ability stuff was pretty good, so there you go. Moltres has an energy acceleration attack, that's mostly why I'm noting it. It's accelerate from Hando, so kind of whatever. Meganium was its own silly archetype that let you effectively rare candy multiple times in a turn, which was pretty fun. Also let you cheat things into play quickly, so there was that. Lost March as a whole is going to show up in here. It wasn't the best deck ever, but had a lot of issues to be honest, but Double Colorless was at least playable at the time, so there is that. With Twin Energy you maybe could have considered Lost March again if you really wanted to, just doesn't have enough support now. But just going to mention it here, Lost March is something we'll see a bit. Mostly only mention the Skip Loom otherwise, which we'll just talk about here and now, because you Lost Zone the Skip Loom and the Hoppip that's under it, and be able to get the Jumpluff out straight away. One of the problems is the Jumpluff didn't attack for a DCE, so your energy base was split. It's kind of unfortunate. Mareep saw some play, mostly in control decks, but there was a funny Breloom deck that was cool with it. The Breloom stays in format, but not being able to auto-sleep, bit of an issue for that deck. Quagsire was a really good rogue deck for a while, alongside the Naganadel that we saw before. We get to move a bunch of energy from the Naganadels to your active and do any sort of water-based attack you need. Frostmoth is probably just better now though, but still pretty cool. The unknown win conditions go away here. Damage was mostly an expanded thing, but we do have Spike Myth coming out, so maybe we could have done something with it in standard. And Hand actually was a win condition that was played with Salazzle, Virizion, and like all the fire energy recovery stuff. We did actually get to do stuff there, so kind of silly. Wobbuffet was anti-Prism Star. Tet play as a result. Girafarig, anti-control in some ways. It wasn't really very good at being anti-control, but a couple of decks that were reliant on specific supporters being in the discard pile and couldn't shuffle them back immediately, you could do some fun stuff with. So yeah, Lost Zone energy from the discard could be pretty good too. So it's fine. Ground Ball, my beloved, this was one of the coolest decks in the Lost Thunder format. So nice to just have something that's like teaches you how to play the game well. Really enjoyed this one. Shuckle was a good card for the Alolan Executor, but that rotated I think last season, so yeah, whatever. If it rotated this season, I didn't even notice it. That's how irrelevant it is now. Shuckle GX was really annoying because of the ability. Preventing damage from stuff that had 2 or fewer energy on it was pretty good for the time period, so yeah. Irritating stuff. Sneasel! There's a Dark type Sneasel still in format, but this was the best one. Being able to discard an energy from your opponent going second was really good. And then the Evil Admonition Weavile probably would have been really good this format actually, because Eternatus plays like 6 abilities in play, right? So being able to do a solid amount of damage to them there. The Donphan was sturdy, here it is. It's not very good by itself, and Zigzagoon of course absolutely ruins it now, but it was very funny. Did more damage if it stayed in play, so it's pretty cool. Suicune GX, mostly Phantom wins actually would be the play here, but I mean it lets you never deck out. That was cool before Fiona existed, and I think there was a deck that played it at some point. It was like the Nightquag deck or something. Wasn't very good to me though. Larvitar was another anti-Pikarom thing. Put enough damage counters on them and this can one-shot it for low energy cost. Double Colorless is something that like Weezing could play, so there was that. Lugia GX, a Lost Purge is a disgusting attack, need I say more. Lost Zone on the opponent's active is really, really devastating. Problem is it's weak to Pikarom, so that's why it didn't see much play outside of control. Grovyle with Sunshine Grace is pretty good. There was the Ultra Beast nullifying Sceptile that was also available, but like search your deck for any grass Pokemon solid. We see this with Grozel nowadays. And the Sceptile GX was a pretty fun deck at the time as well, so kind of worth noting. Blaziken with Firestarter is solid. There wasn't really a good partner for it, and it was superfluous with all the other fire support, but it's still a cool card nonetheless. Swampert was really good with the Gardevoir stuff, and just in general, Stage 2 deck in with Meganium as well was pretty nice. Just the draw power is super good here. Super Boost Energy made it very solid against Reshizard too, so that was fun. Speaking of Gardevoir, Brilliant Search goes away here as well. This wasn't the best card out there, but like Sensitive Ray could one-shot the ADP when that came out, so there was some consideration of using this in Gallade. So yeah. Shedinja, Vessel of Life lets you cheat prize cards, so Control decks played that quite a bit. Both Sableye here are like reasonable to consider. You can discard the top card of your deck with this guy if you don't like what it is, so that's kind of neat. And this one saw play before Jirachi came out, and even sometimes after, in Malamar decks. Like Pepper played this with the Tina-chan Malamar, and being able to use it as an attack going first is really good. Altaria GX specifically for my dumb fairy type Mewtwo Mew deck was really good in Cosmic Eclipse. Being able to stop the GX and EX Pokemon from doing anything to you damage wise is pretty good. Also pierced through Keldeo, which was important as well. Banette GX was good in the Zorak deck when it first came out. Despite being weak to Dark, it was still a perfectly acceptable card to play because it did a lot of damage for not a lot of energy and hit a really good weakness that Zorak was itself weak to. So pretty good. Latias GX is a reasonable thing to have around in the, what's it called, the Reshiram deck that Pepper played actually. I might end up making something like that before rotation. Who really knows? Being able to accelerate a ton of energy in play was great for one card though. The Latios never saw play because the evolution dragon Pokemon all absolutely suck, but in theory this could have done stupid amounts of damage with Altaria because the Fight Song Altaria was in format. Could have been neat, never was. Rayquaza stupidly busted when it first came out. Obviously got mellowed out as we went, but there were still some very funny things that you could do with this involving the Hat Ladies and stuff like that. Cool deck, not really very good though. Not at this point. Jirachi Prism is a fun meme that I know Pepper really wants to try and do. I don't know if we're going to see the Lost March stuff in the end. It depends, not Lost March, Mad Party. Depends how good it actually ends up being. Answer is probably not very, but he really wants to do something with this before rotation, so there you go. Empoleon was really good when it first came out, and it was just a fun deck to play. And also ended up being a pretty interesting Meganium build as well, actually. That was kind of fun. The Evolutionary Advantage Shinx goes away, relevant for the Luxray that does 160 if it evolved from Luxio. The Luxio itself also rotating because Disconnect going away is pretty relevant too, so yeah. Rampardos was used once in the Fossil Box sort of deck because it could do a bunch of damage to evolutions or auto KO basics, which included tag teams and stuff, so that was pretty funny. Pachirisu, my beloved. Once again, we are losing Snuggly Generator, which means the entire Raichu Nuzzle deck that I had so much fun with in Cosmic Eclipse goes away, and that is sad. The other Pachirisu also rotates, which was a way of discarding tool cards, also paralyzing the opponent for doing so as well. Pretty fun card, didn't really see that much play. Cute artwork though. The Rotoms in general all go away. I'm just going to mention them as a block here. This was the Rotomotor thing, where if you had 9 or more tools in the discard, you got to ignore all the energy cost here. Of them, the Frost Rotom saw some play outside of this archetype because it was potentially good into Reshizard and not too expensive to play, whereas otherwise you had to be hitting like weakness specifically. You basically had to build the deck for them, and Wash Rotom was terrible, nobody played that. The Dialgas go away. Both types were relevant for different reasons. Shred wasn't really the attack. It's all about Timeless here. Being able to take another turn entirely was kind of ridiculous. And you skip the between turn step, which means you don't take like poison damage and stuff too. That's kind of busted, right? Giratina goes away. Malamar as a whole is going to go away, as we'll see later on, but Giratina was one of the most obnoxious parts of that. We'd probably still play Tina as a separate thing here, because you'd be able to put more than one damage counter down, unlike the Zigzagoon. It's not as flexible as Ziggy though, so yeah. The Prism Star wasn't as good, but it let you accelerate energy to itself, which you could then energy switch away if you wanted to. Crisis Dive was also like an okay attack, but this card just never quite saw its time. I think the Darkrai Prism ended up being a little bit underplayed at times though. Dark as a deck was kind of awkward in Gen 7, but if this still existed now, I could see this being played with Eternatus in like the next format. I'm actually considering building a deck with this at the time of recording to play for Energy Switch with this and just like scoop up net it. Seems pretty good. Arceus Prism was specifically good in like one deck, the White Kyurem deck that we'll talk about in just a sec because that's over here. But it was pretty fun. If you had the right types of Pokemon on your bench, you could accelerate 3 basic energy from your deck, which was ridiculous. And it did get to prevent some effects of attacks done to it as well. That was kind of good in its own way as well. Gothagrigus, mostly mentioning this because Sai played it. Spirit Juggling is an interesting effect, discarding your bench, which was usually Giratina's, in order to do a bunch of extra damage, was fun, wasn't quite good enough, and the energy problem is difficult to resolve here. 2 energy is a lot to pay when you're losing this Pokemon every turn. Virizion was mostly a cheese card, but it was very funny with the hand deck, where you breeze away to pick up basically your entire board, and then that gives you enough cards to hit 35 in hand, so you'd be able to win on the spot next turn. Had some other cheese uses as well, but that was mostly it. White Kyurem with the Arceusing was really good actually, 160 for free energy when you had a fire energy as part of this as well. It didn't even have to be basic fire, so you could actually play like a rainbow or the unit energy with this, so there were some good options too. If it wasn't for the double water, I would have considered this in a different deck I didn't show as well, but hey, it's pretty good. Genesect's mostly used for the double drive part here, but it did actually see a little bit of attacking, I think, in a couple of metal decks, but like it was mostly just having more tools in play to discard with someone like Gourgeist, so yeah, not super good. Frogadier and Greninja are somewhat noteworthy. They weren't very good, they were definitely worse versions of Crobat, but being able to do damage pings and stuff is a cool effect at least. Haste Slash is an interesting attack to have around. It was fine, I just didn't really gel with it this time. The Evolutionary Advantage Flabebe, which did get banned and expanded because of the Floette that rids the opponent of hand cards. That rotates alongside all of the Florges stuff. Here's the one that pairs with the Dolstall and the Donphan deck that was mentioned before. Shuffles items back. The other one stays in format, but it's just whatever. Malamar rotates, big loss here. It's always sad to lose this kind of accelerate from discard thing. It's a fun effect to have around. We don't see it as often as I think we should, but then again, I'm a proponent for decent energy acceleration like this, and some people really aren't. So yeah, depends who you ask. Dedenne, like the Nuzzle deck is dead obviously, but Dedenne being a Stipe in the Nuzzle deck sometimes mattered, so I'm just going to note it here anyway. Gumi was mostly a stall thing in like BHM, was the main deck that played it. It's a very funny card in that deck, just being able to make the opponent pay more to attack was something they weren't always ready for, so that was neat. Cool card, not much else to say. Xerneas Prism, thankfully we did get to see this actually hit the field in the last match that was recorded, but the best fairy type I could never play because it had an ability and therefore was incompatible with greens. That was the best version of Gardevoir Sylveon for a long time. Really cool card though. 160 for free fairy doesn't sound like a lot, but when it's on a 160 HP single prizer and you can move energy to it by bringing it into the active, really solid card. The Xerneas Prism was specifically useful in my versions of Gardevoir Sylveon. You didn't see it too often, but Sanctuary GX is broken, let's just say it how it is. Move all of your damage from each of your Pokemon to the opponent's active is an insane attack, and yeah, we'll never see anything like that again, I don't think. Not unless we get this kind of mechanic back. The Yveltal GX is kind of noteworthy because of the Obstagoon deck. It was very possible for that deck to just put 4 damage counters on one of the opponent's Pokemon, and then auto-KOing a 3 prizer with a 2 prizer, pretty good. Rest of the card is terrible though, so eh. Zygarde GX was okay when it came out. It died as soon as Double Colorless died, to be honest, but it did have Bonnie as well. I didn't mention her, but getting an extra use of Verdict was kind of neat, so yeah, not too bad. Just lost out on all of the fighting support as we went along. Volcanion Prism was pretty neat in the Quagsire and the Garnadel deck, because you discard water, force the opponent to switch, accelerate it with the Garnadel, and then move it with the Quagsire. Kind of fun. Solar Blast was also quite a strong attack too, being able to do a bunch of spread damage was always good, so yeah. I did say Lost March was not going to get mentioned, but Trumbeak is worth noting specifically because you could Lost Zone the opponent's supporter card if that was on top of their deck, so you could do some very frustrating stuff with that, so yeah. Araquanid, we do have the Bronzong in format, but this does nullify fire damage, so something worth keeping in mind is very funny against the Center Scorch deck, so yeah. Silvally GX is going away, the Turbo Drive one specifically. All of its associated memories I'm pretty sure go away as well, so it can't change its type anymore, but it also doesn't do enough damage, so who cares. This one having an energy acceleration attack was actually kind of cool for certain Mewtwo Mew decks. Most of them would rather just play the Solgaleo though, which we will get to later. Turtonator rotates, this is a Welder Box hit. Didn't see as much play now because it's very difficult to get enough energy to one-shot VMAXs, but it's still a pretty good card. It was very good for its time, so yeah. Tapu Lele with Magical Swap finally rotates. I don't think we have any version of this that comes out after this card. I may be wrong about that, I'd hope I was, but yeah, damage manipulation is a fun thing to have around, but spread has not been good since the Coco Prism, the regular Coco rotated, so yeah, whatever. This Lele also rotates. The Fairy Charms aren't very good when you don't have GXs as the main thing in the format, but Auto Confusion was pretty annoying. There was a couple of cards that only worked with the opponent being confused as well, so yeah. Solgaleo Prism rotates here. This was exceptional for the metal-based decks of the period. Not very good when Zacian and ADP and stuff started coming in, but still. Lunala Prism, a bit less exceptional for the Malamar deck. It didn't really need it because Malamar was already doing this effect, but Psystorm was really powerful if you could charge it. I just don't think we ever quite got to the point where Force Psychic was playable here, though, unfortunately. Nihilego rotates as well. A bunch of the single prize Ultra Beasts rotate. The 2 prize Ultra Beasts also rotate. Like, basically this just kills all of the Ultra Beast stuff. But I'm not going to mention most of them. Nihilego is worth mentioning because Malamar decks could play this, as well as the Ultra Beast decks in general. Stealing one of any of the opponent's attacks as this thing was really good. 2 prize specific though. Sledgehammer for 120 when the opponent had exactly 4 prizes left was a kill on Pikarom, so that's why Buzzwole was insane. Pheromosa had 0 retreat, that was the main use for it, but it did also see play partly because of that in the Arceus deck that Prism Star won from before. Circuitry has an auto paralysis thing if you have exactly 3 prize cards remaining. If you could do some switchy shenanigans and stuff, this could actually be like permanent more or less. Then you just win the game with the Lele. Celesteela was not super good, but if you could hit Moonraker for a single metal, it was pretty solid, so it did see play in metal decks as a one-of. The Dawnwing's Necrozma goes away here, so we no longer have this rush-in style effect. I don't think we get anything like this in the future, but we might be on an evolution now. The Duskmane was outclassed by Zacian, of course, but for its time, Magnezone Duskmane was ridiculously powerful, so give it its credit where it's due. Ultra Necrozma for the same thing. Malamar Ultra Necrozma, when Viridian Forest especially was a thing, was insane, so again, credit where it's due. Magearna, I wasn't going to include this to be honest, but being able to swap your tools around very occasionally does come up. Like shifting Air Balloon from something that has already retreated to your new guy could be respectable, so sure, we'll mention it. That's where the Genesect is useful too, being able to store tools, then use the Magearna, pick the tool up that you need, and then put it on the new guy. Then the Garnadels, like all 3 of them are good, but only the Dragon one remains in format, so I guess kind of whatever. Being able to attach to yourself, which could then be used for a multitude of different purposes, was really good. Lots of different decks could use this sort of effect, even if it seems a bit limiting at first, still really strong. The Garnadel GX, this one was mostly used later on in the format for Stinger, which let you set up some checkmate scenarios against free prize Pokemon, so that was fine. And that's pretty much it for the Garnadel. The Dragon one is kind of useless with all of these Ultra Beasts going away, right? Stark was intriguing, was an okay version of the Beast Raid deck, like when you actually use this for its first attack. Stark Attacker was pretty good because it cut all of the damage your Ultra Beast took, so it ended up turning some 2-shots into 3 shots again, which is pretty good on a single energy attacker. And then finally, we have two versions of Solgaleo, both rotating here. Lunala rotates too, but neither of them are any good. So we'll focus on the Solgaleos, because this is a big hit to Mewtwo and Mew decks. Soulburst, I'm only bringing this one in because it was the one that's already out here. I would rather not have the gold rare, but whatever. Soulburst was used in the Ultimate Mewtwo Mew deck that we just saw Pepper play in the last battle video, which was kind of cool, actually. Like, this card has been decent for all the times you could get it out. It's been pretty good. We used it first in the Metagross deck in Guardians Rising, and then like Lost Thunder had a version of the deck that could use it, and then now we've got the Mewtwo Mew deck is kind of neat. Usually Mewtwo Mew would just play this Solgaleo because Turbo Strike is a broken attack, let's be honest, just held back by the fact that it's on the stage 2 and double colorless rotated. But when Mewtwo and Mew can use it for Welder, suddenly that ends up being really, really powerful. So this guy was super good in the old versions of the deck, but when you can't accelerate basic energy because you don't play basic energy, you gotta use this one. And that's that. Every single card that I think is relevant from the stuff here. I'm sure I probably missed something. Again, these rotations are gigantic at this point. Look at how many cards are over here and tell me that, like, surely I am probably missing something. But that's just part of it. If I am missing something that you think is relevant, let me know in the comments. That's what they're for. Thank you very much for watching and listening along. Hopefully you found this interesting. Tried to be brief with this one as much as I can. You know, when you're talking about like 200 plus, almost 200 cards here, you're gonna end up going a bit long. But hopefully there was enough here that was interesting, and we will see you for a much shorter video on the Darkness Ablaze set coming up.